All right. It's me, John Negroni, and I am live here with someone who deserves no introduction. I'm just kidding. He deserves everything in the world. It's Charlie Ridgely of comicbook.com.
Thank you, kind of, I guess. That became nice.
Yeah, eventually. I apologize. How you doing, Charlie? How's your week been?
It's been all right, you know. Like Christmas is always great, you know, but it's a weird year for anything to be great. So, you know,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
good as it
It's like
can be, and
grain of salt.
yeah, you know,
Oh
2020.
man, we are ending the year. I don't know if strong is the right word. Strong in some ways, I guess. But hey, we're here to talk about our favorite pop culture of the year. Hopefully, we'll have some people trickling in here into the live stream. We can do some table setting for now. Charlie, how would you describe pop culture in 2020 if you had to sum it up? I mean, kind of put you on the spot a little bit
I
because I don't even
mean,
know what I want to say about that.
the first word that comes to mind is online. Even though, like, I mean, everything's online all the
Mm,
time, but just like how so much of what this year was defined by streaming and things that happened on the internet. I mean, this is a year that we got a musical based on a Pixar movie that originated on TikTok, and you know, like all most of the best movies of the year were streaming, and all of the TV this year was streaming, and it just that's not really a word to describe something, but it feels more than any other year that this was solely online because of what we had to do, and it really, it's kind of exciting to me. I know it's really a lot of people don't like this about going into 2021, but I'm excited to see how we pivot or change or don't after this. You know, there's the whole our theater's gonna die and these questions that are everyone's always arguing about, and I'm really excited to see how pop culture and the entertainment industry as a whole kind of moves from 2020. You know, what studios and networks and decision makers take from this and what they choose to leave behind, and the inevitability of some of those decisions are going to be the wrong ones. Like some of the lessons they learned are going to be the wrong lessons, and yeah, I'm really curious to see how this 360 days almost of being solely online affects the rest of like the entertainment world. You know, going into 2021 and obviously beyond that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll say right here, we have no time for negativity on this particular stream. That's not what we're here for. We're here to just have a positive conversation about some of our favorite things that have happened. So maybe Charlie, in a future day, we'll get together and we'll talk about kind of what's shaping up in 2021 in the entertainment industry. And I know you have a ton of opinions, and I want to hear them. And some things I think where we differ too, to be honest, but
Right, right.
not that much, honestly. So I guess we could just jump right into it. We're going to talk about our best pop culture moments of the year. Charlie, what do you think of this graphic I whipped up together of you and me? It
I
looks
look
doesn't it
so
look like
I
we're
look so skinny.
it looks like we're in like the same room or something? And yeah,
I don't know even when that picture was from, but I look so tiny.
you look good, man.
I
I
love it.
almost thought it was the same hat.
It's not, but I'm trying to remember what hat that is. I think it's the Stranger Things hat, but I can't tell.
hmm
I'm trying to think of
I
what white mesh hats I would have, and that's the only one I can that comes to mind.
I have to be honest. I don't usually wear a hat like in my real day-to-day life. The only reason I wear a hat on stream is because, and people don't really know this, I guess, is because I don't look good on like camera without a hat on. For whatever like something about the way my head is shaped and like my hair being so Puerto Rican, I just look like I just got out of bed.
That's how I
So
feel
I
all the time,
right? Oh
not just on a
man.
stream. I'm always been a hat person, and so you know, it's
I like
I always
hats,
have to put
but
hands on.
my partner doesn't like hats as much, so I don't go for the hat thing very often. But okay, we're not here to talk about hats. Hats had nothing to do with pop culture in 2020, as far as I understand it. We do have a question already, and we're going to get to it soon. And if you have any questions as you're watching, please let us know and put it in the live chat, and we'll get to them, of course. Charlie, you are our guest, so I want to start with you. What is one of the best things that happened to you pop culture wise this year? It could be music, games, it could be movies, TV shows. I don't care. I mean, I care, but I want you to just go wild with it.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot. Like I feel like I liked more this year than most people. There was a lot to love in 2020. Not necessarily about the world in general, but movies and TV and games. Like there's a lot of really good things that come out of this year. But I don't think there's anything that I appreciated or enjoyed or loved more than Ted Lasso. the TV
Oh
series
man.
on Apple TV. I was not expecting it to be any good. It was, I'm a soccer fan, and I really love Tottenham Hotspur in England, and they were the subject of the original Ted Lasso skit back in, I think, 2013, when NBC Sports got the rights to stream or to air the Premier League in the U.S., and they did that skit with Jason Sudeikis, and he was this American coach, and the whole joke was that he was just kind of dumb. He was arrogant, an American coach, Southern accent, like he didn't care to learn. The joke was just his stupidity, essentially. And when they said they're making a show, I was so curious about how in the world that was going to work. Because I'd watched that skit, because I loved that skit. It's like this is funny for 5 minutes, but a series of this is just going to be exhausting. And they completely changed the character, and they made it the most hopeful, joyous thing that I could have ever watched. Ted Lasso's an endless optimist, and he makes you feel the kind of hope that you're wishing for in 2020, and that review kind of sums it up. I think mine said something similar. It's like, this should not be good. I did not expect it to be good. Nothing about the structure of this feels like it should be good, but as soon as you watch it, you're just immersed, and every episode just made me happier and happier. And I think I've watched the show 3 times now, all the way through, which I never rewatch TV. But I just kept coming back to Ted Lasso because, in a year where I've kind of been confined to my home for a lot of it, which is very hard for me. There's been a lot of things that have been frustrating or depressing, this was something that made me feel differently. This is something that really lifted me. And it makes you want to be better at everything. It makes you want to treat people better. It makes you want to be more conscious of what other people are going through. And it was such an inspirational, 5 hours of content. And
Is that all it was? Wow.
yeah, it feels
It does
like
fly
there's
by.
so much of it. Yeah. But,
Yeah.
I remember I got the screeners for the first 3 episodes, and at the end of a day at work, I was okay, I'm going to watch these first 3 episodes just because I have to know what the show's going to be about. And I watched them, and I was like, okay, this is actually, it got better each episode. And I was like, this is really, really good. And then a couple days later, they sent the other 7, and I sat through in one sitting and just binged the whole thing. And then when it came out, my wife and I made it like a weekly thing and watched it every week. And then I've just gone through and watched it again because there's nothing about this year that brings me quite as much joy as Ted Lasso. Every side character, every storyline, like it's a joyous show, but it's a very, very like mature adult show, not in terms of its content, but in terms of like actually treating adults like adults and being an adult. There's little side stories where you're like, oh, there's going to be so much drama with this one thing. And then 2 characters just go to each other and have a conversation and say, hey, I felt this. Oh, well, I didn't realize that. Okay. And like they deal with it like adults and they move on. And it's so refreshing and different. And I can't imagine getting through 2020 without Ted Lasso.
That's interesting because it took up there was like a month of my life where this show really dominated my everything. How I was
Yeah.
processing my life, and I think it was back in August when this article came out. So yeah, I wanted to bring this up. This is on the ringer.com from looks like Miles Surrey, and yeah, it definitely is sums up. I think for me, I had a similar situation where I had heard of this show. I heard that it was, really, really good, and that's all I kind of knew going in. I watched the first few episodes, and I was like, yeah, it's just, I like this. I kind of want to see where this is going, and yeah, I think that once it gets to the 5th or 6th episode, I was just gobsmacked by how good it was getting, and it just kept going on that high. So yeah, Ted Lasso is a great pick. Easily one of my favorite shows of the year for sure. I want to switch gears a little bit into the world of video games. Charlie, originally, what about? Do you have video games on your list at all? Is this?
There are plenty that I played this year, and actually, if you go, I wrote an article earlier today, or I published earlier today. I wrote it a few days ago. At comicbook.com, we do every year our games of the year, and we sat one day and we had probably 10 of us in a room or on a Zoom, and trying to decide what 10 or so games were our games of the year, like what it captured 2020, what we loved so much, what was the best of this year. And there were a couple that I brought to the table to kind of fight for in that argument. and probably my favorite of the year was one that we put on there, and I published earlier today, why it's the best of the year. But the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 remaster, a lot of games get remastered. They re-release them with better graphics, and it happens all the time. And if that's all this game was, I would have been really, really happy. But Tony Hawk, I mean, they reinvented things. They brought new innovation. They recreated how multiplayer works and all of that. But they never lost like the feel of the classic game. And it was just some of my favorite memories this year. Playing games were just like when that Tony Hawk first loaded and like that first like drum intro from like Goldfinger. Superman, like that, as soon as that kicks in and it's just, you're back at the warehouse, there hasn't been a mix of nostalgia and new content kind of put together in such a way that I've enjoyed so much, like I did with Tony Hawk. And so, I mean, there's a lot of games I like that. I see you brought up Ghost of Tsushima. I'll let you talk about that. I think that game's excellent. It's one of the best of the year in my eyes as well. But there was nothing quite like Tony Hawk for me. That was just, it's a game I grew up on, and to have it now on modern consoles with modern technology be just as good as I remember, but also new, it was that blew everything else away from me. But there was a lot, and Ghost especially. I'm excited to hear your take on Ghost, because I think there's been a few different like little samurai games come out the past few years, but Ghost really set a new bar.
It's the only one that I've played actually the last few years. I was gonna say though, I still haven't got my hands on the new Tony Hawk, and I'm very curious about it. I think I want to play it for the Switch if I can. But it's funny what you mentioned there about like the mix of nostalgia. Because like the last time I played like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater game was at like one of those video game cafes. Like where you go and like you can order something and they bring you a console and you can just like pick things. And I remember we played like GoldenEye, and we played the original Tony Hawk Pro Skater and Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. That was so fun. I've seen a lot of like Game of the Year lists going around, and Ghost of Tsushima has been like near the top of a lot of them. I think like the game most people are saying is like their favorite of the year is probably The Last of Us Part 2, which to me makes sense. I mean, that is a wallop of a game. I certainly put a ton of time into it. It was very emotional. It was pretty groundbreaking, I think, in a lot of ways. The gameplay was so polished, and just the variety of all the different levels and places you go. Tons of complaints I know of like where the story goes and some of the weirdness that happens like halfway through. But the game that I like, my game of the year I think is pretty obvious, is Ghost of Tsushima, this samurai game that just like tapped into my love of the genre like no other. The Kurosawa mode. Did you turn that on when you were playing this game?
I didn't spend a lot of time in it.
Oh man!
But I turned it on for a little bit and like played through just the black and white, the subtitles. It was very cool.
I did do the subtitles the entire time, so Japanese language, English subtitles. I did Kurosawa mode about half of the game, and that was about the first half. And I highly recommend it. It was absolutely thrilling. I absolutely like. If you like Akira Kurosawa, and I guess I should explain for people who haven't played this game, works that so you're playing the game, you're able to put on like a black and white filter, so it looks and feels and sounds like an Akira Kurosawa movie, like to the point where the sound is actually kind of muffled a bit, like you're watching one of those films. And the graphics in this game are already so striking and so gorgeous that when you turn on this mode, it like the contrast of the black and white amplifies everything to like another level. I think at least it did for me. And so, man, I was so into this game. I just buried myself in it. I was so in love with it. Played the whole thing. When they came out with like the new game plus, I got right on that because then you can like replay the game with like everything you've gotten. I especially like how like this people have complained about the story of Ghost of Tsushima and how they're like, well, even this article is saying it's like a familiar open world game. That's not a criticism I jive with personally. I think that this game has such a fascinating story about like the honorable samurai who has to like choose dishonorable methods, and there's this conversation about like, what is honor? Like, what's the use of honor if the outcome is that you lose everything or like people die? It's a hard game to kind of wrap your head around. I'm not gonna lie. It's funny because one of the things I wanted to talk about next is actually what is showing up in this ad, the flight attendant. So I guess we could jump into that. Charlie, have you seen the flight attendant yet?
So I actually just this past, I guess like 2 days ago, I sat and watched the first 2 episodes. It's been on my list for a while, and I've been waiting because I knew it's something that my wife would be really, really into. And just, I mean,
your
the
wife
end of the year,
and John Negroni.
and John Negroni. And it was one of those things where, I had a couple opportunities, but I knew it was something we'd want to watch, and I know she likes watching things with me the first time I watch them, because sometimes when I watch them the second time, I can be annoying. I guess that's the best word of, preparing myself for what's happening, and talking about things, and, how, because I'm a nerd and that's what I do. But, so I've been waiting till we could sit and watch it together, and finally, the other night, my wife and I and my mom sat and watched the first two, and it really, really good. It's one of those things, like, it's not this like thing that just knocks you off your feet and blows you away, but it's like the whole time you're like, oh my, like, this is awesome. This is so, it's so much better than you expect. And I think it's unfortunate that you don't expect more from it, because of, I wish I could remember who wrote the article, or where it was. And I'm so sorry that I can't remember. There's a great article about Kaylee Cuoco and why she feels unexpected in this, because of her character in The Big Bang Theory, and because of, how Penny was treated on The Big Bang Theory, and how she was kind of the butt of the jokes. And, it just kind of, it sets you up to feel like that's all she can do. And, you watch Flight and you're like, no, like, Kaylee Cuoco was like the most talented person on Big Bang Theory. She just never got the chance to do anything. And
yeah, like, it's so sad that, like, Jim Parsons, he got so many chances after Big Bang Theory and during to show up in movies and, do all kinds of, like, dramatic roles, and, like, people expected that range from him. But Kaylee Cuoco, who arguably is your headliner, like, co-headliner with him, yeah, we really haven't gotten to see much from her outside of Big Bang Theory all these years. And I know people were scratching their heads of, like, who knew? And, like, we knew. Come on.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, she was so, and she was great in the Simple Rules, and I mean, she was on the last season of the original Charmed series, and I'm really glad that she did Big Bang, even though I don't like the show, because she made $1 million an episode and got the opportunity to launch her own production company and choose what she wanted to make, and The Flight Attendant was the first thing that she chose to make, and it's fantastic.
It's like brilliant casting. Like, I watch the show, and you forget that that's Kaylee Cuoco. She disappears into it completely. The drama of it is so, and she definitely, like, lifts up all the other actors in the show, which I think isn't talked about enough. Specifically, like, the people who are extremely talented, right? Like, Sosie Mamet, of course, who's like her best friend / lawyer, who ends up, every character in the show feels so considered with their own backstory. I mean, this show is like a slam dunk, if you ask me.
And I think Zosia Mamet, it's funny you bring her up. I think I had a very similar reaction to her, because I was really into Girls when it first came out, and it got on my nerves really quickly after a couple seasons.
Yeah, same.
And so her character, especially if you watch Girls, her characters can be very aggravating. She's so talented. She makes you really believe that if she really sells that character. But when I saw her in the show, I was like, all right, like, I mean, I'm not gonna, like, not watch something, but I wish this was a different person. And then when you watch her in something that's not Girls, it's like, oh, she's so fantastic. Like, she's so good as this character, and she's a really good complement and a really good, like, almost foil to Kaylee Cuoco.
Yeah, they're very different in the show. They have very different personalities.
They bounce off each other really well, which I think that's true of everyone in Kaylee in the show, but I think especially Zosia, like, how when they're going back and forth about Lost, she's like, I know better, you need to stop. And it's this really fun back and forth that they develop. And I was very impressed by her. It was cool to see TR Knight in something again. I haven't seen TR Knight since they killed him on Grey's, so
spoilers.
It was cool to see it. That's been so long ago.
The guy, I always forget his name, but Dario from Game of Thrones too.
Michael Huisman.
There we go. Yeah.
Huisman. I think the correct thing is the guy from The Invitation.
Oh, that's right. He wasn't that, wasn't he? He's been in a bunch of things.
Yeah, he's always, like, in the back, like, not in the background. He stars in things, but he's always, like, there, and you don't realize it, and you don't, like, notice, like, oh, it's that guy.
Yeah.
And then, he's turned in so much great stuff, like The Invitation. He was great on Game of Thrones, as weird as it was to replace Ed Skrein with him. Mm-hmm. He did a really good job making the character his own. But yeah, I mean, everyone on the show's fantastic.
We've done a show, we've done 2 shows now. We've done a couple games. Time to go into the world of books. Now, I'm going to be honest, this was a year where most of the books I read, vast majority, were books that did not come out in 2020. In fact, looking at it, I think this is the only like high profile book I read that came out in 2020. I mean, I read a few things, started a few things, but just didn't get into them. I haven't read Ready Player 2 yet, for example.
Do
Um,
you, I mean, do you still want to? I'm not
I
trying to be
do.
negative. I just like reading all of the things about it. It's like it really has made me not
Yeah.
care to read it.
I'm gonna make my own mind on it. I always felt like the criticisms toward the first book and the
Mm.
movie in general were, most of it was pretty valid, I think, but I don't know. I just feel like people were like dogpiling on this
Yeah,
thing for the sake of it and not really, like really harping on like one criticism that in my mind isn't that big of a deal. Just I understand like there a lot of the excerpts out of context look bad, but again, they're out of
out of
context, so I
context. Yeah,
can't,
that's true.
I want to give it its fair shake. But one
Our
book that
culture
I
never
did.
uses book lines out of context.
Right, right. When does that ever happen? But no, I did read one book. I did it because it was a book review I did. And I'm gonna share it right here. But this is Lindsay Ellis's debut novel, Axiom's End, and this is actually the review that I wrote for it. So I'm plugging something of mine over here. But yeah, this is a book that I definitely enjoyed a good bit. In terms of how in terms of like how it stacks up, sure, to like some of the really great books that have come out the last few years, it doesn't really come close for me. It was something I kind of enjoyed in spite of itself. But Charlie, did you keep up with this one at all? Read it or
I have not heard of
look
this at
into it?
all. So I'm learning as you're
Oh,
speaking.
cool. So this is a new discovery. So do you like Lindsay Ellis at all, or do you follow her any of her things? Watch her video essays?
I don't.
Okay. I highly recommend you do. Lindsay Ellis, in my opinion, is definitely one of the most essential voices in film criticism, particularly for YouTube. I think her YouTube channel, Lindsay Ellis, is a treasure trove of just fantastic insights. Some of my favorite YouTube videos of all time come from her. She does an auteur theory breakdown of like Michael Bay that is endlessly fascinating and also hilarious. She's a very funny person. She also has a couple of like blockbuster videos about Game of Thrones that Charlie, it's your thing. I know it's your thing, so
I mean,
I'm assigning
to
you
be
some
honest, I
homework,
might have watched her videos before and just not known it
possibly.
was it was her because I think I don't know how to say this, but I'm trying to be nice. I've been really put off by YouTube film criticism. And I don't want to
All right,
invalidate
kicking
anyone
you
who
out
does
of
that.
here.
No, no, this isn't. I think the frustrating thing is that so many of the people that you see out in the spotlight are the people that are maybe not doing it for the best reasons or not,
Hmm.
truly good at what they're doing. It's more of a numbers game, and I'm sure we can both think of a few off the top of our heads. And I think just early on,
Right, we won't
I
name
got that
names.
like, oh, this isn't. And there are people like Lindsay Ellis out there that like, if anything, I'm just kind of admitting a fault of mine is like I don't watch enough because I think I'm put off by the bigger ones that kind of give it a bad name at times when I know
I hear
that's
you.
not the truth of what all is out there, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay Ellis and also Sage of Just Right is somebody
Hmm.
who I frequently go to, and there's all kinds of like YouTube film critics, a lot of them who don't have huge audiences that are doing some of the best film criticism out there. So I highly encourage you to dust off, just maybe avoid some channels. I know I
Oh yeah,
do. The
I think that's
algorithm brings
the
them
thing
up,
is that
and I'm like, whatever.
it's hard to get these recommendations. I think is where the challenge comes in because
Right.
of the algorithms. It's hard to find people that you're like, oh, I genuinely appreciate this voice. When it's a publication, like I know to go to Vulture to find a movie review because I know I want to see what Bilge or what the other people there have to say because I trust the publication.
Sure.
And with YouTube that doesn't exist, so it's harder to find the people that are very good. You know,
I hear you.
so
I hear you.
I need things like this. I need you to come on and tell me like, hey, watch this thing because now I will. And then I can tell other people, and we can, word of mouth still has power.
Well, once you get into some of the videos, I do recommend you get into Axiom's End at some point because it is a really, really fascinating debut novel. So Lindsay does like a whole video actually about the writing process for this. It took her like 10, 11 years just to get this book published, just to get it out in the world. And she talks about the struggle of writing books that I found so much relatability in as an author myself. But this book, it takes place in an alternate version of the early 2000s. So it's like a Bush administration kind of book
Mm-hmm.
where we basically have like an alien invasion kind of thing. It's kind of like a mix of a rival with something kind of like the three body problem. And but it's very kooky and funny. It has like a Transformers kind of bent to it as well.
Hmm.
And it's a fascinating book about like millennial life and like communicating with creatures we don't understand and like the relationships we have with them. It's very Spielberg in that way. It's a solid piece of work here. So it's the one 2020 book that I thought really stood out to me that I read in completion. That wasn't because to be honest, most of the books I read this year were Brandon Sanderson books and a few like political books and things like that. And yeah, I just didn't get into new stuff this year for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard, I think,
Well,
to find initially like new things that were coming out. And I'm, I used to be a big reader, and I feel like I've fallen off a lot the last couple of years, and that's something I'm trying to like climb back into. And both with film and with books, and a lot of what I dealt with this year was stuff from years prior that I had missed out on, or things that were brought up to me for a reason that I had never seen or never read. Obviously this year there was a lot of turmoil when it comes to race relations and social justice, and one of my favorite things that I've read in a long time was The Color of Compromise by Jamar Tibsey. Tibsey. I can't remember which one's first to be with you.
not sure.
But The Color of Compromise, if you haven't read it, I think you would like it a lot. And it deals with the modern church and how racial divide and racist ideals have really found root in things that we use to sell something good. And it's a really fascinating read right now in the time that we're living in 2020, and it was a book I really, really appreciated, that I highly recommend to anybody. The Color of Compromise.
Yeah, I see it
And
right
I feel like
here.
Jamar's another book coming out
Yeah.
next year as well. And there's another book. Between the World and Me. I had finally sat with Between the World and Me from Ta-Nehisi Coates, which is another just, it's hard at times, but it's very necessary, and it really puts things in perspective, and that's what I tried to use reading time to find different perspectives.
Yeah.
But as far as like 2020 stuff, I only read one 2020 book this year, and it was the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which was the prequel to the Hunger Games. I was a really big fan of the Hunger Games when they came out, and I was really big into the books.
Yeah, same.
And I was not into this idea. Kind of like with Ted Lasso, I was like, if we're going to do anything with Hunger Games, a prequel about Coriolanus Snow seems like the
Yeah, it's like why
worst thing.
I never read it, so
It blew me away.
Okay.
I think it was some of Suzanne Collins' best writing. The character she crafts with Snow is so, because it kind of puts him at the end of high school, like the age that what's her face, Jennifer Lawrence's character. Totally blanking. Yeah, it puts him at the same age that she's at in the Hunger Games, and it's, his family doesn't have money, and he lives in the capital, and he's supposed to have money. He has to come up with the appearance of money, and he's trying to get into like his next school to do something better. But it's this whole thing of he does not have these opportunities that he thinks he should have, and he's trying to game the system. And when he gets asked to be, it's the first year they do mentors, and the people of the capital are mentors to the tributes. And at that point, it's not really this big ordeal. It's like, hey, it's the games, and just to remind people that you can die and that the capital's in charge, and they throw people from each district into the arena. It's just an old like gladiator arena. There's nothing special about it, and they go kill each other, and that's the end. And he is the one that really turns it into this grand spectacle that we know from the Hunger Games, and he falls in love with his tribute, and their story is so interesting, and the character of Snow is so compelling, like, because Katniss was complicated, but at her core she was always good. Katniss, everything that motivated Katniss in this book was saving her sister. There was one motivation really when you tie it all back and you look back through the trilogy of books, and for Snow, it's all self-preservation. And there are good parts of him, and there are very humane parts of him, but there's also this drive to be what he wants to be, and nothing's going to get in the way of that. And he's such a complicated person that you read it, and there's sometimes that you're like, I hate him so much, and other times you're like, I really want him to figure this out, even though you know what he's going to become later. And it reminded me a lot of what I think a lot of us wanted. I don't want to rag on the Star Wars prequels because I adore the Star Wars prequels very, very much. They're what I grew up on. But you think about kind of what you wanted out of Anakin's story, and you wanted this person that you loved and hated at the same time, and you knew because you knew what they were going to be. And sometimes it was hard, just whether it was acting or writing, whatever. Like some things got in the way of that. But this really tells that story of like, here is this big villain, and here's how they got there. And you're not just like waiting for them to be a villain. You want them to be good, and you want them to make these decisions. It was much better than I anticipated. I was very impressed by this book, and
that's the first positive review I've heard of it, or actually like any review, because I don't know anybody who
I feel like it really went under the radar when it came out. Like it wasn't talked about.
I just saw people being like, "I'm not going to read this. Why would I read this?" And then nobody actually gave it a fair shake. I mean, I know people in the literary community were, but I just wasn't like aware of those reviews. And then so it's fascinating to hear. That was one of the last things I would have expected to get brought up.
I would not have expected it either, but it was, I really dug it cover to cover. Yeah. It was a very fun thing. I mean, I'll just plug quickly. The only thing I read, probably my favorite thing I read this year was the new High Republic book from Star Wars, The Light of the Jedi. It comes out
That's on my list,
next week, I think. I read an early copy of that and love what they're doing with the High Republic. I think Charles Soule's a great writer. I'm working through Claudia Gray's High Republic book right now, but it's a really cool corner of Star Wars that I think it explores Jedi in a way that we haven't seen before, and it's really fascinating.
Yeah, I saw. I mean, I know we've chatted a little bit, and you've been like very high up on like what they're doing with Jedi for this era, and it's so fascinating. So the High Republic. I know. Yeah, you said that's coming out next week.
Yeah, January 5th. The first book of it coming. There's a bunch of High Republic things launching in the beginning of the year. I think Claudia Gray's Into the Dark, which is like the YA novel, that comes out in February, I believe. I don't know the exact date, but the first kickoff of it is The Light of the Jedi from Charles Soule, and that comes out on January 5th.
I do appreciate that. Tomorrow, 2021 is going to kick off, I think, for me, on a high note, a high kick note with Cobra Kai season 3.
Oh yeah, have you watched it yet?
No screeners for me. Did you get some?
I did.
Oh man, so you gotta hush. I don't want to hear a thing.
I won't say anything. It's very good. I don't think that's the secret that it's great.
I don't even want to know that. I just.
I mean, if you like the first two seasons, you're gonna love this. It doesn't.
Okay.
Season 4 is honestly the one I'm really interested to see because season 3 was produced when it was still at YouTube, and when they sold to Netflix, season 3 was already in the can and done. Yeah. So Netflix released the first 2 seasons. That was something else this year that I really loved was discovering Cobra Kai. I'd never even seen Karate Kid before.
For me, it was revisiting because I watched the whole thing again because I did watch it on YouTube when it came out.
Yeah, it was a new discovery for me, but it was one that I really fell in love with. And I've talked to Billy Zabka a couple times this year, and he's just so fun. And that whole cast just loves each other, and you can tell they love what they do when they go to work and when you watch the show. And I was excited when they moved it up to say that okay, cool, like this, we're going to kick off the new year with something great.
Yeah, that's what I love. We haven't talked movies yet, which is a little out of character for you and me. But we did have a question in the comments of which you guys think was the best Netflix movie of the year. I have a definitive answer on that. But I thought this might be kind of fun if we actually take a look at this piece. Speaking of plugging things, this is the top 15 films of 2020 from the Young Folks, which I'm a staff writer on. Charlie, do you have a top 15 on or top something of the year for comic book?
I didn't write one this year. It's just the end of the year has been crazy, and I might do one kind of the first week of January. I know Patrick Cavanaugh, one of our editors, and he kind of heads up horror stuff and does a lot of Star Wars stuff for us. He wrote top 10 horror movies of the year, and it was kind of one of those things I thought about. But this week, things with traveling, and I just didn't write one. But I have a list of them, just not published.
Perfect. I want to kind of go through this, and if something is on your list, I want you to stop me, and then I'll let you do your thing. Starting here with David Byrne's American Utopia.
And I want you to do the same thing too. If something's on your list, because I'm curious to know.
Yeah, American Utopia. It's not in my top 25, top 30, or anything like that. I guess we could start with well, first of all, doing like a full like top films of the year thing with Cinemaholics. So that's coming next week. But so we're not going to do like a full on list here because I'm
I guess I need to send you my list then.
Yeah, I haven't collected any lists yet. I'm not sure how we're going to do it this year, but I know American Utopia was a high up on like Will Ashton and
Hmm.
Abigail Chessie's list. They were big fans of this one. It's good. It's a good Spike Lee concert film. It's David Byrne doing his thing. I'm thinking of ending things. Yeah, also not in my like top 20 or top
Me neither.
10. I did really like it. I like Charlie Kaufman in general, but yeah, I just
See,
didn't
I'm not as
stick
big
out for
on
me.
Charlie Kaufman, and I liked it. I liked it more as it went on. I
Hmm.
really had trouble with, I think, the first half, maybe even just the first act. I think it really took a while for me, and I loved where it ended up. It really drugged there for a while for me. But yeah,
I
it
hear
was.
you. Yeah.
I enjoyed it overall when all was said and done.
Yeah, I enjoyed unpacking it after the fact, and it's I love unique films like this
Mm.
that try different things. Very lovable movie. Small Axe in general. So there was a tie on the young folks. We had Lovers Rock and Mangrove on there. Neither of these were in my top 10 either. Lovers Rock is pretty high for me. I really enjoyed it, and I did consider it for my top 25. But yeah, I don't know if you're a fan of those ones.
Actually, I've only the only Lovers Rock that's something I'm behind on. The only Lovers Rock I've seen has been Red, White, and Blue, or not Lovers
Oh,
Rock. The only Small
Small
Axe scene
Axe.
I've
Yeah,
seen,
yeah. Red, White, and Blue was good.
which I really just wanted to. I love John Boyega, and I really wanted to watch whenever I had the first chance to watch John Boyega. I took the first chance to watch John Boyega. So Lovers Rock something, and Mangrove are ones that I'm catching up on as we get closer to like voting for awards. They're on my list to get through.
I would definitely check out Lovers Rock before all of
Yeah,
them.
I've
It's
heard nothing but
fantastic.
amazing things about it.
Tenet. I was surprised this made the top 15 for the young folks. I didn't think a lot of our writers were like that into it. I certainly wasn't. I know, Charlie, you were on Cinemaholics talking about Tenet. I think they call you, I think on your business card, it's
I'm
Tenet Apologist. Is that
I don't
correct?
know. No, I'm really in like I enjoyed it, but I also it frustrates the hell out of me. I
Same.
think I watched it. I watched it a few times, and it makes me angry each time. But I think I've just come to like turn it off, and it's really fun at times, and it's just so big and boisterous that you know there are things that I'm coming to deal with, even though I think it is a very silly movie at its core that takes itself a little too seriously. I certainly don't feel the way Corey does about it, but I mean, it's a fun movie to watch a couple times, but nothing that I'm like I think
Yeah.
is
I wish I
out of
had
this
had
world.
fun watching this. I was really bored. To be totally honest with you, I was just not into it. And that's weird. I mean, Christopher Nolan films. I think the only other Nolan film I just did not really like much was Interstellar. I was super into Dunkirk, and Inception's one of my
Mhm.
all-time favorites. So, yeah, and I like Dark Knight Rises. I don't think that's a bad
Yeah,
film
I don't think
either.
there's a Nolan movie that I just outright don't like.
Hmm.
I don't think any of them outside of you know Memento and maybe Inception are like top tier incredible, but I like all of them.
I'd put
Um,
Dark Knight and Batman Begins up
yeah,
there personally.
I mean I'm not quite there, but
And
yeah, I mean
Prestige.
I get it.
Um, so yeah, Tenet. Yeah, not one of ours. The Assistant. This narrowly made my top 25. It was super close. In fact, it could actually. So keep your eyes. I mean, I might slip it in at some point because this movie. I saw this one at Sundance, and my God, like it just one of the best thrillers of 2020. But that's so amazing considering it. It's not really a thriller, at least not in the conventional sense. But
Hmm.
yeah, I was super happy to see this made almost the top 10 for the young folks. I've seen it hit like number one, number two, and a lot of other lists, and rightfully so.
I'm really excited to see Julia
Julia Garner.
Garner. Sorry, like really blow up, and she's so talented.
I really love the theory that she's going to be Madonna, that they're working on that. Any day now, I hope that casting comes out because she looks just like Madonna when Madonna was like in her early 20s, but
Hmm.
not that I knew her personally, as far as you know. Bacurau, I was so happy this made top 10. This is a really fun movie. I really loved this one. Did you see Bacurau? Actually,
I
no.
did not actually. I bought it when it was on like one of those Kino Lorber like festival things,
Mm-hmm.
and I was busy and I forgot and missed it, and
Ah, bummer.
I'm mad that I'm glad I spent money on it, but I'm mad that I missed my screening window
Yeah,
because
when you
I've
get a
heard awesome
chance.
things about it.
Yeah, it's really solid. It's a really good like survival not adventure, but survival action movie.
Hmm.
Killer third act. Like you want to talk about movies that end strong. Yeah, this is like a Brazilian film too. So if you're behind on foreign films, this is one of the best of the year for sure. The Invisible Man. Yeah, I like this movie. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate Lee Winnell, but I gotta say this definitely didn't come close to my favorite of the year or anything. Although it is fascinating to see it's one of the few theatrical, like
Right.
movies that I saw outside of a festival and outside of my home. This is one of the very few.
See, I was that. So that's in my. I think it's number 5 on my list right now.
Oh, that's awesome.
I
Okay.
love Lee Wanell. I mean, I've always been a fan of Lee Wanell, but what he's done lately and the things he pulls off with this film. But I actually didn't see it in the theater. I missed it when it was in theaters, and then it came out, and I got a Blu-ray, and I didn't watch it till about Halloween week, and I don't know how
Really?
I didn't get spoiled on the big diner or the restaurant scene.
Yeah, man.
I did not, and that was one of the most genuinely shocking things I've seen in a long time. And I
That's
just,
such a great moment too in a theater because the audience
I know.
lost their minds. Oh my
I know.
gosh.
I hate that I didn't get to experience that, but it's still that. Whew, Lee Wanell's doing some really special stuff, and between that and
Yeah.
Upgrade, like I'm down for whatever Lee Wanell touches. I will say though, I don't know if her other film is going to be on here, but this was not my
think it
favorite Elizabeth Moss
Same,
of the
same.
year.
I think Shirley might be on here. I'll just say it just
I
in
mean,
case it's not.
I like the
don't
movie
forget
better,
it.
but in terms of performance, I don't think that was not the Elizabeth Moss performance that I really
Yeah.
clung to.
It's Shirley was just such a knockout performance.
And
You're
some of the
right.
most atmospheric filmmaking I've seen in years.
Oh yeah. I love simple movies like that. Simple in like such a good way.
Hmm.
Nomadland. I really, really enjoyed Nomadland. This is definitely in my top 15. It's probably around like my 11 or number 12. This is from Searchlights, and I have a feeling this is Chloe Zhao, and she has the Eternals, Marvel's Eternals, supposed to be coming out
I'm
this year.
so interested to see.
Yeah,
After watching The Rider, I mean, The Rider took me by storm. I was not ready for what The Rider
it's a
was.
terrific film. Yeah.
Nomadland's my number 2 of the year.
Oh, killer.
And I mean, she just, the way that she sees America is so fascinating. And
So authentic.
the fact that she is doing a Marvel film and not just like, it'd be one thing if she was doing like, the Ghost Rider or like just some solo character on this journey, but she's doing this big team up thing. And I'm so curious. I'm so like, I can't put my head around
Yeah,
what
specifically,
she
like,
will do with it.
I feel like it's like a hack in the Matrix to see Camille Nanjiani and Angelina Jolie on screen together. That is just something I'm not like mentally prepared to understand.
And then
I mean,
in a
it's been so
film
long
from
since
Chloe
Jolie-
Zhao, it's like,
yeah, but it's like how long has it been since Jolie was even in a film? And then to see her kind of like mixing with the next generation of like big stars in this way, the next generation of like big directors. Because Chloe Zhao is on an ascent, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think Nomadland is for sure going to get nominated for Best Picture. I think she's going to get nominated for Best Director, and I think she stands a really strong chance of winning both. And
Yeah.
I would not be surprised in the slightest. This is
and to add, I wouldn't be disappointed either. I mean, if that wins Best Picture or Best Director, I mean, even if that's not my top choice for those things,
yeah.
to see this film win those things would be really, I mean, like with Parasite last year, I'd be really like happy to see that happen.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about one of my favorite pop culture moments of 2020 was Parasite winning Best Picture.
Yeah.
That was a get up off your couch and clap kind of moment for sure.
I did not think in a million years
Yeah.
that kind of decision, that the Academy had that in them. I did not, like,
Don't
I
worry,
didn't
they'll
even
disappoint us
process that.
again
Oh,
soon.
yeah.
I
mean-
Hillbilly Elegy.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
We'll see
I don't
what
want
happens.
to.
Birds of Prey. We're big fans of Birds of Prey in the young folks community. I'm not the biggest fan of Birds of Prey. I liked it a good bit. It's it's a film. I think I gave it like a B minus. But it really clicked with people. It's like one of it's the only superhero movie I think that came out in theaters, and it was such. It kind of reminds me of the way Wonder Woman 1984 is like such a vision that is certainly resonating with some and not resonating with others. I think Birds of Prey definitely critically more of a success, for sure, compared to Wonder Woman. Because I don't think people were like outright trashing Birds of Prey, but there was this sort of like they went for it attitude with both movies, and the public sort of reacting with, but should you have? Which I say yes.
Yeah, I agree. And
I'll take
honestly,
that any day.
I agree in both cases. I like that they went for what they went for, and I think Birds of Prey does it better. Does what they're trying to
say
do
the
better
same,
than what, even though I really enjoyed Wonder Woman. That Wonder Woman's a film that I can look at and say, there are some problems, but I really enjoyed it in spite of those because of what they went for. And Birds of Prey, I think it's a much more, it's a much tighter production. It doesn't feel like, oh, there's these issues, but I liked it. Like, it really feels like a cohesive,
Very minor
well put
issues.
together film. And all
I
the
think it was just
performances
the
are great.
execution. Like there was just some things that I was like a little underwhelmed with how they did the Harley Quinn story. Some of the action scenes I just wasn't that impressed with. Whereas with Wonder Woman, there there were moments in that film. I think the only moment in Birds of Prey for me was the sandwich, which
Sandwich is
still
so good.
still a killer moment.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those. I mean, I like it more than a lot of DC films that have come out like post Nolan. You know, it's one of my top in terms of that. But I mean, I'm not trying to say anything about them. It's just there's not a lot, and a lot of them were not amazing. You know, but I mean, I really enjoy it. Birds of Prey is something I know I'll revisit many times.
Same here. Let's see, Palm Springs. Yeah, this is one of my top films of the year. This is like my number 3.
It's my number 3.
Oh, look at that synergy.
Look at that.
Which tells you how good of a year it was. So I saw this at Sundance as well, and yeah, man, this was like one of the best cinematic surprises because like went into this literally knowing nothing. I didn't even know The Lonely Island was associated with it. I didn't know Andy Samberg was in it. I didn't know Kristen Milioti or J.K. Simmons. This was like pure blind watch because literally all we knew that it was just some kind of quirky comedy vaguely. They didn't even give us like a description of it when we were going into the movie because I saw this at a P&I screening, and like we sit there and as soon as Lonely Island Classics shows up on the screen, that's when I knew I was in good hands with Palm Springs. Just one of the absolute joys of my year.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, I've watched it like 3 times now.
Yeah, I've watched it a couple times. It's
so funny, so much heart, such a great premise, like taking the Groundhog's Day formula and doing its own thing with it, like completely not reinventing it, but like reinvigorating it with something that is just so smart. So like, of course, like why didn't we think of that?
Yeah.
You know, like
and I think
with Happy Death Day coming out so recently.
Right. I think this also has my favorite quote of the year. I need to go back through. I mean, it's hard to remember quote, but like in a year where I don't remember a bunch of quotes from a bunch of movies, there's one quote from this film that has like just stuck with me from the first time I watched it. It's at the end of the movie when they're going into the wormhole or whatever, and it's like, what if we get sick of each other? We're already sick of each other. It's the best. And like that, I don't know why. I guess it was just being in quarantine. It was in the middle of summer, and you know, my wife and I have been stuck in the same house for 3 or 4 months at that time, and it really resonated. Of like, sometimes you drive me nuts, but like I could not do this to anyone else, and I would never ever want to. And you know, I wouldn't trade all this madness for anything. And it really like that line really resonated, and I've come back to it many times since seeing it.
Oh, it's perfect. Yeah, I got to write this right up here for Palm Springs. I won the raffle. But yeah, I say here, you know, like it's the rare comedy that like, yeah, it's trying to make you laugh. Yeah, it's like a comedy, but it's also trying to make you care about the characters in like a deep personal way. And so like, to me, that sums up the best thing possible out of 2020. I did see this before all the COVID stuff, so it hit different, you know. And then the second time I watched it was in the midst of it, and yeah, similar with you. I was like, oh my gosh, this was so precious.
I think it says a lot that so many of us saw this in really different circumstances, and it still resonated with everyone.
It really did, and also it's a good beer brand right there. Okay, Emma, which one of the last films you and I talked about on Cinemaholics together, one of the first ones this year.
I mean, I'm going to be on the podcast, but I still have not seen Emma, so I don't know if I actually talked about.
You were on the episode then. I know you were, because we talked about Onward. And
yes, I was there for that.
I remember introducing you like I would like a dinner guest scene in this movie, and I remember I think your exact words were, John always introduced me like that in every circumstance. The blundered bluffs of Pennsylvania and the oh gosh,
I've got this Blu-ray on my shelf, and I've been waiting to watch it. I just
that's good.
Haven't gotten there.
It's good. It's a solid B movie. Top 30, top 50 for me, something like that. Here's another one of my top 5. Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. This is like my number 4. And yeah, another Sundance film. This one, like just looking at that like thumbnail gets me emotional. This movie just kicked my ass, man. Like I don't have anything to say. I've talked about it like 20 times this year on some sort of broadcast, and gonna do it again because it's one of those movies that like I wish everybody would watch it. Like that is all I want, is for people to watch it and understand like why it's having the impact it's having on as many people as it is. Have you seen it, Charlie?
I have not.
Yeah, I can tell. I can't.
It's one of those that like I know it's good, and I know it's going to be good.
It's gonna hit. Prepare
I've been
yourself.
trying to prepare myself and put myself in the state to do it because it's just I know it's gonna whoop me.
Once you get there, we'll have to have a follow-up conversation. Okay, my number two of the year and a serious contender for my number one. In fact, it's been like a point of contention for me, and it's been like for the longest time it was my number one of the year because I this is another Sundance one I saw, and Minari from Lee Isaac Chung, just like one of my favorite family dramas in recent years. Just a beautiful, touching personal portrait of like the American dream and the limits of it. And that sounds serious, but like this really is like Steven Yeun and his young kids like just trying to make it. And there's this like beautiful, authentic, relatable family drama, and with like humor in it. Like it's a film that like made me laugh like a ton because it's showing like the real lives of like kids who have like immigrant parents. And man, this movie is just like it one of the perfect movies of 2020 or near perfect ones
This
for
is
me.
one of those. I know I mentioned it with Julia Garner, but I followed Steven Yeun for such a long time because when I first started working at comicbook.com, my main role was working with Brandon Davis on Walking Dead. Him and I would go to the Walker Stalker cons. We, covered the show every week. I mean, it just so much of my life was poured into The Walking Dead, and Steven Yeun has been so underappreciated for so long. Not only in that show, but in everything he's done since then. I mean, what was
Well, there's
the
Burning
no,
and
it wasn't Burning. It was I'm totally
Sorry to
blanking.
Bother You.
Boots Riley. Yep, Sorry to Bother You.
Yeah.
Like because he's such a different character than he plays in Walking Dead. He's so different than Glenn. He's just this really like upbeat. Just everything I've seen him in, I've been electrified by. He's in one with Samara Weaving, about the office where they like it's just super violent.
Yeah,
It's not the Belko Experiment. It's the other one. It's on Shudder.
Oh, I know what you're
I'm
talking
just
about.
I don't know why
I'm
I'm
blanking
having
on
such a
it
hard
as well.
time this day and this year with remembering what things are called.
It's all right. We
Um,
have the Google machine, so we're just gonna look up Steven Yeun and Samara Weaving. We're gonna feel so dumb for not
I know.
mayhem.
Yeah, it just
That's what it is.
everything he does, man. He turns in such a great performance, and while he wasn't my favorite performance of the year. I'm glad he's getting the recognition that I think he's deserved for so long. Because
Absolutely.
he knocks it out every chance he gets.
Yeah, big year for him. I think this film is such a. If it doesn't get Oscar attention, I'm gonna riot. Speaking of which, though, Sound of Metal really creeped up on me
I'm
this year.
surprised to see that so high on this list.
It's
I mean,
fantastic.
it's a great movie. Don't get me wrong. I haven't seen it up in like the top 2 or 3 of like if you would have switched
Yeah, yeah.
this and Nomadland, that feels like where I've seen those movies so many times on these
Agreed,
year end
agreed.
lists. Not that's not taking anything from my personal preferences. Just actually that it kind of is because I have Nomadland at 2 and I have Sound of Metal at 8, so it's exactly flipped. But
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like I've seen so much of like this is a top 10 movie, but it's really cool to see it so high on a list because it's a really thoroughly enjoyable but also like devastating thing to watch, and
Hmm.
I love what they did with the deaf community in this movie and how they talked about it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this or not. So for the first 3 years of college, I studied to be a special education teacher.
Yeah, you mentioned it.
And it was something that I ended up not pursuing because I loved the kids way more than I loved the job. But I took, multiple years of sign language, and I wish I remembered more of it than I do. But seeing how in those classes, like how society often treats the deaf, to see the way it's presented in this movie, you have his perspective of it feeling like a bad thing, and his counselor like, no, like we're not, nothing wrong with us, we're just deaf, it's fine. And the brightness and the joy that this brought to that community was just really, really powerful and really neat to see unfold.
Yeah, I struggled with this movie quite a bit for those reasons because like I can't hear without hearing aids. I got them right over here, and yeah, like unless sound is like pumped directly into my eardrums, I can't tell what's going on. And so like watching this movie, it's like a horror film. It's like me reliving some of my trauma of like being in that doctor's office, and like nothing prepares you for when a doctor tells you that like the hearing you've lost will never come back.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something about that just like makes you hate the universe. And this movie like outlines just how freaky it is, and like how you sometimes lash out and try to cheat it and try to get around it, and I it's a heavy movie, a heavy metal movie for sure. It's in my top
That
10.
sound editing is
Oh
just
my goodness.
nuts. And Riz, the way that Riz sells it, because like you said, it's such a horrifying experience to go through. Not because you think that being deaf is bad, but because it's something that's been taken from you,
Yeah.
and your normal is gone. And the way that he sells and processes that, it just was beyond what I expected. And the final frame of this movie knocked me out.
Yeah.
When he turns the hearing aids off, he takes them out and just looks. Or I guess not the hearing aid, but the implants. He takes them off his head and turns them off and
Yeah, we won't say
looks
anything
around.
else
So
in case people haven't seen it.
it's
It's a
good stuff.
crazy movie. Hits so hard for so many reasons, and I'm really happy it exists. I honestly, like, for best actor, Riz Ahmed is probably my choice. I think that this is his award to lose. Honestly,
he was number 2 or 3 on my best actor list, and I'm hoping that number 1 on this list will give me a chance to talk about.
sure. Well, before we get to that, and I have a feeling I know what it's going to be or might be. So there were some films that were left off of this list because we put this together before some of these films came out. For example, Soul is not on this list because most of us in the staff list, writers list, we had not seen it. I think like 2 or 3 people did in October, but they didn't like the film as much. Now, hey, if I had seen Soul in time, there is a chance Soul might have squeaked onto this list here, but it didn't, and that's all right. It's in my top 5. But a few other films, I was sad to see the First Cow didn't make it on this list. It's not on here. And that's a film I really enjoyed, and I thought it would get a little bit more love from us, the young folks. Additionally, One Night in Miami, not enough of us had seen it to include it. That's a film that'll be coming out in a couple of weeks to more audiences. It's only in limited theatrical.
Yeah.
I've been trying really hard to see it, but it's a tough screener to track down.
Yeah, it was I ended up watching it. It was one of the situations where it was a festival over the in the fall, where you could digitally buy a ticket or whatever, and I sat and watched it through that.
Yeah.
And it's more of a moment than a full narrative, but it's so rich and it's so fun to explore. I mean, and all the actors in that film. Leslie Odom Jr. is my favorite for supporting actor this year. Sacha Baron Cohen's close, but Leslie Odom Jr. the way he does Sam Cooke and the way he sings Sam Cooke in moments in this film are just knockout
One of my
start to
favorite.
finish.
Speaking of Leslie Odom Jr., one of my favorite pop culture anythings of the year was his Song Exploder episode on Netflix, where he does "Wait for It" from Hamilton. Please check it out. It is fantastic. I don't know if you've seen Song Exploder before on Netflix.
I know, because I assumed it was
so
like
worth
a
your time.
weird singing game show, so I didn't watch it.
No,
But it sounds like it's not that.
It's not that. It's based on a podcast that I've been listening to for years. It's where they take popular songs and they break down how they were made. So if you have any sort of love of music, it is for you. And
anything in Hamilton, there's so many layers and layers to all these songs.
Yeah, with Odom Jr., you get a lot of like how he did the vocal performance of it, and it's tremendous.
It's crazy to think that all the Hamilton stuff was this year.
Yeah, it's true.
Like
it was though.
It definitely was. It was the biggest thing that there was.
Onward almost made this list because at the time I did this, it was pretty high up for me. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Onward. Really love that film. There were a bunch of other films I really liked from 2020 that didn't make it, like True History of the Kelly Gang, Painter and Thief, Tommaso, Martin Eden. There's a whole bunch. I wish could have included them. Yes, God, Yes. Man, there's so many. This is a great year for movies, though. But my number 1 of the year did make it on the number 1 of this list, and that is The Five
Okay,
Bloods.
good. I was real concerned that I wasn't gonna get. Oh, yeah, it's my number 1 as well. I fear that going into award season, it was just out too long ago, and it's getting overshadowed. I've been trying to encourage people to watch it again, but man, The Five Bloods. It's the one film that I just haven't stopped thinking about. And it's every couple days I'll think about something from this movie, and it'll sit with me.
Yeah.
Delroy Lindo. There's that whole that third act where they follow him on his own.
Yeah.
Is just some of the most powerful acting I've seen. He carries the whole thing on his shoulders at times, and I mean I've always been a big Spike fan, so I went into this expecting to like it, but I think it really even exceeded my expectations.
I think people were underestimating Spike after, despite Black Klansman, getting awards attention. I think people were like, "Yeah, it's getting awards attention, but it's not that great." Whereas Da 5 Bloods is like one of his like new masterpieces, and
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, he still got it in.
I need this Criterion so bad.
Oh man.
That's the one thing I love Netflix, but it drives me nuts that, the Netflix, like the lack of physical releases. I don't really quite get why that's the case with Netflix, but there are certain films like, I bought The Irishman despite it not being like one of my favorite movies because I needed to, I want to have the Netflix films because they're good and maybe I'm just paranoid about it going away at some point, but The Five Bloods is
$120 billion in revenue. I think they're here to stay.
It's just one of those things like they have the right to just pull it and be like, oh, we're going to add this back next year, and build, like they can do it with any title that they want. And
yeah, they don't do that with their originals.
No, and there's nothing saying they would. I'm just saying they have that ability, and I don't necessarily want. There's a reason I own all the Star Wars movies. I love them, and I want to be able to pop them in whenever I want, no matter what Disney is doing. And The Five Bloods is like that for me.
No one app should have all that power.
Yeah.
Power.
But I mean, I think part of the issue was this being Spike on Netflix. I think people made an assumption about it because it wasn't coming out during award season. It followed up, Extraction earlier that year.
Yeah.
This year, Jesus.
But I mean, Jonathan Majors is in it.
Oh yeah, it's incredible.
Also, I gotta say, like, I was thinking about this the other day. My number one film, almost every single year comes out in the summer. It's bizarre. For me, that was Da 5 Bloods this year. Last year was Last Black Man in San Francisco. I saw that like June.
God, I love that movie.
The year before that was 8th Grade. That came out in the summer. The year before that was, I think, Baby Driver. That came out in the summer. Yeah. The year before that was Sing Street. That came out in the summer. So I don't know what's going on with me. Mad Max Fury Road from 2015. That was in the summer. I could keep doing this. I think I'd have to go back to 2014 because that was Whiplash, and that was like award season. But
last year for me was JoJo, and that wasn't until award season. But Black Man was my number 2.
Oh, I didn't know Jojo Rabbit was your favorite from last year.
Oh yeah, I adore Jojo Rabbit. But Last Black Man is right there with it.
I'm glad that I tend to be the lone Jojo Rabbit apologist.
Oh no, JoJo's
welcome. I'm welcomed to your.
Yeah, JoJo's always gonna have a special place in my heart, but anyway, anything Jonathan Majors is in, I'm gonna go watch it because here he is again. Just
there he is,
being incredible.
Lovecraft Country was something because I put out on Twitter, like so other people could like weigh in. I have it right here, but we had the word said Lovecraft Country, which you're gonna hate me for this. I'm on the last episode of Lovecraft Country. I'm like halfway through the final episode, and I still haven't finished it.
I still haven't finished either. I'm like halfway through, so I'm with you. I haven't finished it.
Okay,
there's so much going on, and I wasn't the one writing about it, so it didn't take priority for me. I think that was around the time that Cobra Kai started up on Netflix, and my attention really went to that because that's what I was writing about at work. Mm-hmm. And so, I didn't keep up with it, but I mean, everything I watched it was great. Everything he's done has been fantastic. The fact that he's playing Kang the Conqueror in the MCU is weird and so awesome.
Movies,
so awesome.
Yeah, I do really love Lovecraft Country. It just sort of like dropped in quality, I think, for me over the second half. I just wasn't as into it as I was the first like 3 or 4 episodes. But Cassie says that Hades is her game of the year, which I never played Hades. My soon-to-be brother-in-law, he has been playing it, and he was hyping it up for me a bit. She also says The Haunting of Bly Manor, which I didn't see. I missed that one as well. I didn't see Haunted Hill House or whatever that's called, the Shirley Jackson.
The Haunted Hill House, yeah. I mean, I adore Hill House. I think Hill House is one of my favorite shows of the last few years, and I think that's part of why I didn't love Bly Manor the way that other people did. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very good. It wasn't quite. It didn't hit the highs of Hill House, but it was really neat to see this gothic romance that didn't. It never took itself to say, oh well, we have to be horror. It's like, no, we're gothic romance, and we can really stick to the gothic romance, and it tells a great story. Hill House to me was just so good, and I think part of it was just having one director. For Flanagan did all of Hill House, and this switched directors throughout the series, like most shows do. And I think there was just something special about that. That the lightning that struck with Hill House, having one person do every single episode, and there's one episode of that show that's like 3 takes through the whole 40 some minutes. or 3 cuts, and it's a really, really profound, really impressive episode. But I mean, Blind Manor was very good, and when we did this Game of the Year discussion at Comic Book, a lot of our writers are very, very into Hades. Hades has been a really, really big hit with our people. It's not my style of game, but I've even knowing that, like, I'm not into like the top down, like slash, you know, RPG type of thing. But
Yeah.
everyone talking about it every time it's on sale on the Nintendo store, I'm like, I think I should buy it because
honestly,
everyone's just
I haven't
talking
even
about it.
I feel terrible. Like, seems like a game I would be too, honestly. But oh well.
Yeah. So Defy Bloods was number 1 for both of us. Was there anything else that was? I know you mentioned a couple. Was there anything else in your like top?
Well,
10 or 15.
I was gonna jump off movies because I did already mention Soul, and so probably don't have to get into that one quite yet. But I did want to bring up this one before I forget. I would be super mad at myself. Normal People, yeah, your favorite show.
I have not watched
ever. Yeah, this is a guilty pleasure for me for sure. This is the Hulu adaptation of the Sally Rooney book, which I read last summer, and yeah, this show, man, like, kind of wiped me out a bit. It's so weird because it's like it shouldn't be good, and it probably isn't. I don't actually know. I know people have like trashed it a bit, but this show, for whatever reason, it just it hit me. It really got to me. I don't know why, but it did. So that's all I'll say. It's like a romance kind of thing, and it's a sort of about. So here's actually the way in for you, Charlie. I'm gonna give you a reason to check it out. Have you ever just sort of felt like you're in some sort of like romance or some sort of relationship where like you should be with the person, but it's just you both are so unable to communicate how you feel? Or have you ever like seen that happen in your life and just felt that sort of like, why didn't this thing work out? And like, why, it's a show about that sort of regret.
I don't necessarily know what that feels like, but I think that Richard Linklater did a really good job of telling me how it feels.
Oh man, that's a good point. Yeah, I love the Linklater. But yeah, I recommend Normal People to anybody because I think that it's such a touching portrait of, how hard it is to love someone and to love yourself. Ultimately, that is the message of like loving yourself and appreciating yourself and respecting yourself. But it's not everybody's favorite, I guess. But were there any other movies? I did mention Soul. It was one of my top. And I know you liked that one as well, right? So.
I liked Soul. I don't think I liked it as much as you, but it's in my top 15. I actually have Onward one spot higher than Soul. I'm one of the few people that I appreciate Onward more than I did Soul.
I remember seeing that. Mm-hmm.
I think I just had really high expectations for Pete Docter, and it just wasn't quite what I expected it to be. I want to watch it again. It has some of the most beautiful animation I've ever seen, though. There's that scene with the guy in the Knicks hat playing guitar in the subway that's like just blew my mind. But surprisingly, you and I shared a common thread in adoring Pixar. I mean, you've obviously done way more with it than I have in your lifetime, but I know we're both really big fans of what Pixar has done. And I was really shocked that when this year kind of shook out and was all said and done, my favorite animated movie of the year was not from Pixar. If you haven't seen Wolfwalkers on Apple,
oh man,
the Wolfwalkers,
that's a good one.
I think again, it was a case of just not being prepared for it and really being impressed by what it was.
I have to admit, I don't like it that much. I liked it.
I know everyone does. It's one of those that to me it's my
number 28.
Stuck. It's my number 6.
My number 28.
I was very high on Wolfwalkers, but both Pixar movies were in my top 15. The two that I want to mention, I feel like I can talk about Promising Young Woman for a long time, but I don't need to because I feel like there's so many people talking about how great that film is.
I still haven't seen it. I want to, but the screener gods were like, "You're fine. You don't need to see this."
It is.
Abby and Will got to talk about it without me.
So I mean, there is plenty out there. Especially there are a lot of awesome women who have written awesome things about this film. Go find them. It's great. That's all I need to say. But the two that I want to mention, because I feel like they're not on a lot of lists, my number 15 is on Uncorked on Netflix. Which
I didn't see that one.
It stars Mamadou Athie. I can never say his name, and I feel so bad about it. Mamadou Athie, Courtney B. Vance, and Niecy Nash, and it's about a guy who lives in Memphis. It was shot on location in Memphis. It's Prentice Penny's feature debut. He does. He's the showrunner for Insecure on HBO. and it came out like February or something. It was a really early like dump on Netflix, but it is a fantastic film. It's a
I remember
guy
hearing
who
about it.
his dad owns a barbecue restaurant in Memphis, and he's going to like kind of take that up. But he really wants to be a wine sommelier, and that's his, you know, his passion. And it's really just the story of this guy going for what he believes in, even though it doesn't what he wants, even though it doesn't really match up with his culture. And it's I think Prentice knocked it out of the park. It's a really enjoyable film. The soundtrack is awesome. It's almost exclusively Memphis hip hop. And there's a couple scenes where they're actually in France, and there's French hip hop in those scenes, and it's a really really good movie that I think a lot of people missed out on because it happened so early, and then the pandemic took place, and it really got buried. But the other one, my number 4 film of the whole year, and it's something that Corey Woodruff and I have been telling everyone to watch, and it's called Spontaneous. It's the feature debut for Brian Duffield, who wrote Love and Monsters, who wrote The First Babysitter, which I think is very good. He wrote Underwater. It stars Charlie Plummer and Catherine Langford, and there aren't words for how much I love this film. It is. I honestly don't even want to talk about the premise because I didn't know anything going into it, and it just blew me away. But it is one of the coolest depictions of see what I did there. One of the coolest depictions of high school life that I've seen since I mean it's like Breakfast Club level good at understanding the world of high schoolers. And the things they go through, and you put it now with the pandemic and with school shootings and just the lens of what we deal with now. This film, it's endlessly funny and charming and surprising, while also being really thorough in how it examines these characters. And I'd put that up next to any Oscar type movie, and I think it holds up just as well. Brian Duffield did a hell of a job with his first movie, and it's one that I recommend to everyone. If you haven't seen it, if you watched Love and Monsters and really like that, it's tonally very similar. And they said Duffield wrote that and then wrote and directed this. So if you like that tone, this is 100% for you. It's the biggest surprise of the year outside of Ted Lasso, and it's one of my favorite things I've watched in a long time. So.
It's so
genuinely, if you have an opportunity,
people are discovering it.
Yeah, it really got buried. I mean, it was in theaters during that Tenet time.
Yeah.
When they tried to open theaters back up, and they didn't really advertise anything except for Tenet, and so it really got missed. And then it just got dumped on VOD, and it flew under the radar. But it was like on sale on Vudu and Amazon for like $6 at one point when I ended up buying it and watching it. And so if you have a chance to see Spontaneous, please see Spontaneous. I can't imagine anyone being disappointed by this movie.
I have to second that.
It's one of those that I can't recommend enough. So,
I definitely want to take a second. So I have my yearly movie rankings, which I do every year. Mm-hmm. It has everything I've seen this year except for Baby Teeth, because I just saw that today. So I haven't added it to the list. Charlie, I lied to you earlier. Mistakenly lied to you by saying Palm Springs was my number 3. You're about to see that was in fact fake news. It's not number 3. I did change it. I forgot I changed it. This is my official top like 165 or however many movies. The Five Bloods number 1, Minari, and then one we didn't talk about was Possessor, which was another Sundance one. And this movie, oh boy, one of those ones that I went into it thinking I was going to hate it, that I was not going to be on this film's wavelength, but that definitely was not the case. I found myself just enraptured by it. Mm-hmm. Is it on your radar at all? Did you check it out?
It's a screener I've got sitting here waiting to watch. I mean, I've still got a pile to get through, but it was.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's on my list, and that's part of why I haven't watched it, because it wasn't one of those that I knew I was going to like or knew I was going to hate. I'm like, I'm saving it because I'm so. Mm-hmm. I don't know what my reaction is going to be. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it.
But it's one of my favorites. I mean, Christopher Abbott just, holy cow, in this movie, and Andrea Riseborough are forces of nature in this. We did talk about Soul already, and Never Rarely, Palm Springs, Sound of Metal. 20th Century, though, I had to include it in my top 10, and it's been creeping ever since I first saw it, in top 20 or so, and I just keep moving it up. Because this is like one of the most absurd, hilarious, ridiculous comedies I've seen in a long time. It is just one of a kind. If you wish movies would be different and like we would get movies that are trying different things, this is the one to check out for that reason. Also, She Dies Tomorrow. Did you have a chance to see this
No,
one?
it felt another one that was a lot like Possessor, where it's like
Yeah,
this could be wild.
another horror. Yeah, this
I'm
one
surprised
definitely
to see so
resonated
much
with me.
horror up on high on your list.
Yeah, you
Those are very Will Ashton picks
underestimating.
of you.
Wow. Okay, and it's funny because both of those movies are not in his top 10, as far as I understand.
That's shocking to me.
Um,
That's more
isn't it?
surprising than the being in your list.
He has some interesting ones on his list, but I haven't seen his final one yet. Nomadland, as we talked about, as my number 10. And then yeah, once we get into my top 20, it's like I'm Your Woman, which love that Robert Brosnahan performance. I mentioned these offhand before, but also The Nest and Boy State, Kajillionaire. My gosh, man, like these movies, Time and His House, and uh, 2020 was a year. I included Queen's Gambit, a mini series. I usually do on my movie power rankings, but if you take that out, then Shithouse actually is my number 20, which I definitely don't feel bad about. Shithouse is like, man, that movie. That's one,
That's the
Charlie.
documentary about people in the bar.
No, that's Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets, which is
Okay.
number 23. No, Shithouse is one that Will Ashton kind of forced me by a penalty of like criminal law. That if I didn't see it, no, you just shared a screener with me. But it is fantastic. It is one of my favorite debut films of the year, and it's like, Charlie, I think this is one that I easily recommend to you. I would look it up and get out ASAP. Um, yeah,
I'll have to look around and see if I've got it.
these are still kind of moving around a bit, like Collective, Anything for Jackson, Dick Johnson is Dead. These are all really great, but they could be moved around depending. And then you get to like Onward and Wolfwalkers, Shirley, which yeah, it used to be my top 25, but it dropped.
I will say
And
that
then,
I have Bored in my top 10.
do you really? Oh,
I
interesting.
do.
Okay,
That movie,
huh,
I
that's a
I
good one.
expected to just I didn't I was not ready for what that was gonna do to me and how hard
Yeah.
I was gonna laugh at that film, and especially because the first one came out. I mean, we're about the same age. We're like within a few months of each other, I think. And when they
Are
came
you,
out,
are you
we were
born in
in
90?
91, like
Oh,
early
okay.
91. So
Okay.
this was like when I was in high school. This came out, and it was one of those like as a teenage boy in the suburbs, I loved Borat for all of the reasons that Borat's not great. I didn't. And so when this was coming out, I rewatched the first one thinking like, I know this has not aged well. And then you watch it, it's like, oh no, it's aged perfectly. I just didn't get it.
Yeah, yeah.
I laughed because it was crude and insensitive. And when you watch it, it's like, oh no, like we're the joke. It's amazing. And
Very
then this
funny.
film just like takes it so much further. And I mean, Maria Bakalova. I'm not really sure how. I might have just called her a dessert. But phew, I was blown away by Borat, which is probably one of my bigger surprises, being
Same.
floored by
Yeah,
that film.
really great. So that's in my top 30, and Sylvie's Love is down here as well, which I could probably move that up a little bit more. I could see it kind of pushing up here a bit, and then you get into the films I'm a big fan of, but like didn't quite get in the top 30. Like I guess I did move The Assistant down. I'm not sure why. Black Bear, This Is Where Spontaneous Lives,
Yeah.
Trial of Chicago
Child
7.
Chicago 7 was another one that I thought I would like be okay with, but I liked a lot more than I was ready for.
Yeah.
I think it's like number 12 on my list. Uh, I also haven't seen nearly as many movies as you have.
Do you know how many you've seen?
I've seen about 80-ish,
Okay.
which is more than if you would have told me in a pandemic year, it's more than I would think I would see.
Hmm.
But I mean, it's like half of what what you've burned through.
Well,
So
yeah, that's the beauty of Cinemaholics is we kind of push ourselves every week to watch too many.
yeah.
Um, I
So
guess
it might be lower on my list
all
if
the
I
way
had more of
down.
these things. But I'm glad
Yeah,
I'm not the only person that thought Eurovision Song Contest was fine.
yeah, I had it high, but not that high. This is where we get to my least favorites of the year. Artemis Fowl, Coffee and Kareem, Tax Collector, Endings, Beginnings. These movies just
I had a few of those down there with you. I mean, I think that Babysitter Killer Queen is at the bottom of my list.
I didn't see that one.
It don't. It's I really enjoyed the first Babysitter. It learned all the wrong lessons from its predecessor.
Hmm.
It's the McGeeest to McGee movie. Artemis Fowl I have down there. Spencer Confidential. I really have a lot of not good feelings towards.
I know, but we said no negativity. I feel
Yeah,
terrible.
no negativity. I did not watch The Tax Collector on purpose because I really do.
That's positive.
It's so frustrating because I really want David Ayer to be a great filmmaker.
I know, yeah.
I think he has Training Day obviously as a writer. I mean, Training Day is an incredible script, and Fury is one of my favorite. Up until 1917 was probably my favorite war film in years. I love Fury, and I think that there's parts of. I mean, I know that this is not a widely held opinion, but I think parts of Bright are really good. I think if with a better screenplay, not written by Max Landis, I think Bright is a much different beast. And I think David Ayer did the best he could with it. I've always rooted for David Ayer, but it's like when I watched the trailer for Tax Collector, I was like, I'm just not going to do it. I can't. It looks just like it's mean to be mean, and I don't get why, because he feels like he's not a mean person, but it just I just stay away from it.
It's just
I was not ready.
Yeah, it's sad. I would skip it for sure. Is there anything else? We're kind of getting toward the end here. I think I covered everything I wanted to, but I probably forgot like 50 things.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much about 2020 to talk.
We didn't get to music, folklore,
music.
Fetch Me the Wire Cutters or the Bullet Cutters.
The Fiona
Apple's album.
I mean, I'm real big on the Megan Thee Stallion album. I like hip hop a lot, and I think Megan, after what she went through earlier this year, like just that album's ferocious from start to finish.
Chef Kiss.
Real good.
There was great music this year. Not surprisingly, but
the formerly known as the Dixie Chicks.
Oh yeah, I haven't listened to that album.
I really like Gaslighter a lot, and I'm not a big country fan, but they're not really country the way that I know. I like real country. I mean, I love Brooks and Dunn, but
I like folky kind of country.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Stapleton and Tyler Childers had a song this year that just was after all the riots and the protests, and Tyler Childers put out a song. I wish I could remember the name of it right now, but that put me in my seat.
I want better protest songs than we usually get, man.
Speaking of protest songs, what was the other? Dior. It didn't come out this year, but it was like an anthem for the protest. Pop Smoke. He was killed at the beginning of the year, and his album is. Oh man, I've listened to Pop Smoke. It's a great writing album too. If you're working and you need something on, Pop Smoke is great to put on. That's been one of my favorites this year.
I usually put on lately for me. I always put on jazz because that's like my favorite. But that's why I like the soul soundtrack. Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, John Baptiste.
Some of my favorite music this year has been instrumental. I don't think it's probably not a secret, but it's probably easy to guess. Like I love Ludwig Göransson. You and I are both big fans of Donald Glover and Childish Gambino, and Ludwig's been producing Childish Gambino's music since Childish Gambino has been a thing. There's a song called Bonfire on one of his first on Camp that I loved for the longest time, and there's a line in there that he says, "I put in work, ask Ludwig," and it's like Ludwig, was producing his albums, and now to know Ludwig by as his first name, when someone says Ludwig, that's the first thing I think of, in modern pop culture, and he has such a cool year with The Mandalorian and Tenet. I mean, the best part of Tenet is the score of that film.
And we didn't talk. Man, we didn't talk about Mandalorian. Oops.
But anything Ludwig touches. I mean, he was the Community. Like he did Community and New Girl before he was in film, and now he's everything he touches. And
I listened to the music he did for the first season of Community. Is on my one of my playlists, like my movie playlists, because it's like dun 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 dun. Dun, dun,
this year for scores has really been
great.
And I think it's been cool because you have there hasn't been the traditional, there's not a John Williams score this year. I don't think there's a Hans Zimmer until I guess Wonder Woman was Hans Zimmer. But for the most part this year, you didn't have Hans Zimmer. It's been a lot of this new wave. Reznor and Ross have two incredible scores. I think Soul's a bit better than Mank, in both in movie and in score.
I want to shout out Emile Mossieri though, who did Kajillionaire and Minari. Which is some of the best scores of the year for sure for me. Nomadland's
not eligible for the Oscars, but the Nomadland score is heartbreaking and beautiful. And one I really liked, I think you might Shirley. I can't remember the woman who did the score for Shirley, but it was such a strange because there was no rhythm to it, but it was the way that it was built and put together. It really added to the atmosphere, and it was creepy. It was
I don't
real good
remember it
stuff.
that much, to be honest with you. I mean, I remember enjoying it quite, fine.
And
Tamar Kali.
and Pemberton did an awesome job with Chicago 7. I mean, Pemberton's always great. There was a lot of really cool scores this year that I've kind of had on repeat.
Oh, that's right. She did Mudbound as well. I was like, I knew I'd seen that name before. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
also known
she's
as
real
Tamar
talented.
Coletta Brown. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Well,
did you want to see the Mandalorian? Now that you brought it up,
briefly we can. I mean, it was a big pop culture moment. It was the most pop culture moment out of a lot of things we've talked about.
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean, I guess Hamilton was probably the only thing that I can recall being, and friggin' Tiger King.
Yep.
I'm glad we're past that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, don't need to even get into that.
It was
stuff.
fun. It was fun to watch one time, and then I didn't think about it again.
Yeah.
It was enjoyable, and then it wasn't.
Yeah. We kind of covered the whole Tenet thing and how all that stuff happened. We didn't get into Mulan. That was more of a misfire than anything else. And uh, you kind of covered at the beginning of how we were at home and we were enjoying these
Yeah.
things in a very different setting we usually would. But Mandalorian, that kind of felt normal to me. It felt like
Yeah.
the water cooler show without a water cooler a bit. Everybody was kind of watching and talking about it, and huge revelations, like huge Disney announcements were happening while that was coming out, and
Yeah.
like the future of the show, all of the spin-offs that are coming. And amidst all those criticisms I think people have of like, they just feel like now it's a vehicle for spin-offs, and I totally get that. I think it peaks with the Ahsoka episode, which to me just like showed like the future of Star Wars when put in the right hands is in such good hands, because like that episode of television is like cinematically just scrumptious.
Yeah.
The Ahsoka
See,
episode
I'm
is just
I'm the
fantastic.
weird guy with Mandalorian. I mean, the Ahsoka episode's great. I like the finale a lot. I mean, I'm not gonna like freak out over Luke coming back. Luke's awesome. That's it's cool. But like I really love the episodes that feel like they're on their own and they're just weird. Like the Frog Lady episode 2. Peyton Reed's The Passenger with the Frog Lady and the giant spiders, and Paul.
Peyton Reed.
Peyton Reed was the director, but the dad from Kim's Convenience, coming in as the X-wing pilot, and like that
Oh,
whole
yeah, yeah.
episode. That's my favorite of the series so far, just because it's really concise, its own thing. It has a lot of Alien homage. It's really eerie. I mean, it's downright scary at times, and it's action packed. And the Frog Lady is such a fun, unique kind of character. Yeah, I felt the way after the end of season 1 too. As much as I loved the finale, and like that episode where they're in what's the name of the little the sanctuary? It's the Bryce Dallas Howard episode from season 1 where they're in that little village, and Pillboy from The Good Place is in there, and they're just like these little one-off episodes are where I think the show really, really takes off. And Ahsoka almost feels like that, because if you didn't watch the cartoons, the animated shows, that's a one-off kind of moment. It's not like Luke coming back, it's its own thing if you haven't watched the Clone Wars. I really like what the show's doing when it really gets down to Mando and these little side characters. It's
Same.
just
I
it's a
can't
ton of
believe
fun.
we're about to get to season 3 next year, and I don't know what they're gonna do with it. And that's fun. That's exciting. It's like Last Jedi, how that ends.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, they could go anywhere from here.
I mean, I would hope to not have a whole season of like fake Mark Hamill face. As much as I like Luke, and I like right, and it's a weird trust that I feel like so many times in pop culture right now people don't have, and the Mandalorian's earned it. Like I don't think they're going to do this weird. Oh, now it's a Jedi show with Baby Yoda, and like I trust them not going to do that. They're not going to take it in a weird direction. They're going to deliver something else that's really cool, because they've had 2 seasons, and the worst I felt about it was like I like that. Like that's the worst I could ever say about an episode, was that I sat there and I enjoyed it and I thought it was really cool. And the best is like, hey, this floored me.
Yeah.
It's been really consistent, which you don't see a lot after. Cobra Kai has been one of the only shows that's been that way after a couple of seasons. It's like, okay, this is consistently what I am enjoying.
We got a question here. Best indie game of the year. from username New Sun. I can actually show it here, I think.
Hmm.
What's the best indie game of the year, Charlie? I think I have an
I mean,
idea for this or no.
I guess Hades would be considered. I'm not as familiar with the studio that makes
Uh,
it, so I don't know if it's how quite indie it is. I mean, Among Us really took off, but
I was
it
gonna
really
say
it didn't
Among
come
Us
out
is
this
a
year.
huge contender.
I mean, Fall
Supergiant
Guys was
Games.
huge for
I don't
a
know if that's
period
indie.
of time. I guess it's Epic Games, so it's technically indie, but not indie. I wouldn't consider
Indie
it.
adjacent.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're like, oh, like Focus Features is an independent. It's like, well, kind of.
I'm bringing up an image of my game, which I'm pretty sure it's from the people who did Monument Valley, and this is a game I've been pretty obsessed with the last couple of weeks. But bring it up here. This is called Alba. I don't know if you've checked this one out yet.
I have not.
This is a mobile game. You can get it on Apple Arcade, and this game is so fun. It's huge and ambitious too. I play it on my phone. I wish I could play it on my iPad, but it kind of part of the game mechanic is that you use your phone as like a camera within the game, and it's kind of like Pokemon Snap, where you're taking pictures of like the wildlife and you're trying to find
Okay.
like rare breeds and stuff. And it's super fun. It's also kind of got a nice little climate change message to it. I think the developers are Spanish, so it's like Spain setting kind of thing, and it's just a really fun open world game. It's like a lot of really interesting characters. The design is really gorgeous, and yeah, I'm a fan of this one. There's a bunch of indie games I like this year that I that are not coming to me. Like for some reason, I'm thinking of that Samurai Jack game, but I don't think that's indie because that's Adult Swim.
Yeah, see, it was one of those. I mean, I think I'm focused so much on film and TV and comics. Like, I play a lot of video games, but I never. It's rare that I take the time and really dive into the heavier indie stuff. I mean, there's a game that just takes you by storm and everyone plays it. But this year, I started playing back through Assassin's Creed games because I never played those before, and I've really fell in love with that
Oh yeah,
franchise.
Valhalla.
And
Ugh.
I've been.
That was a letdown for me.
Oh, I love Valhalla. I've
You
really dug
did?
it. Oh yeah.
I
I mean,
I got like 40 hours into it, and I was like, I'm not into it. I just couldn't anymore.
I really love that they changed the mechanics a lot and
They did.
changed the gameplay. I mean, I've really
I like.
everything
I did
the
like
last
it better
three
than
games.
Odyssey.
I've loved since they've changed the format. Those have been the games that I've enjoyed the most. I mean, Origins I think is still my favorite
I skipped
of the
Origins.
whole Origins. It's got my favorite assassin of the bunch. And it's ancient Egypt. Like I really dig the setting, and I've always been into like Vikings, and so to me like this Valhalla really hit a sweet spot. I haven't put as much time into it as I want to because I had to. All these games came out at one time, right there with the new consoles,
Yeah.
and I had to do a lot of writing and review for Black Ops Cold War, and so I was kind of a good amount into Valhalla, and I just had to stop and go into Cold War and play a lot of Call of Duty for work, but. Valhalla's kind of sitting. I'm waiting to jump back into it when I've got some real time because I know how deep I get into those Assassin's Creed games. But anyway, all that to say, this has been a year when I've been going back through and doing things that I never and watching things that I hadn't before. Like I said earlier, I hadn't watched Karate Kid until this year. It was just a empty space of pop culture for me that once Cobra Kai was coming out, I went and watched the first two Karate Kid movies and I fell in love with them. And it's just kind of been 2020 has been a really good year for playing catch up and diving back into things and finding things that you didn't expect to love. Like Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey is one of my new favorite movies of all time, and I'd never seen it. I'd never seen Bogus Journey. Now it's like I couldn't live without it. It's been a really cool year for that.
You kind of like interneted out for a second, so I didn't hear part of that, but I think I got the main gist.
Just this year's been a cool
yeah,
year to reflect on things you missed.
yes. Lots of great games in general, and indie wise, I definitely I played more indie games this year than I think I ever have. To be totally honest with you,
I played a lot of
would you have
Cuphead, but that
another-
wasn't from this year.
Cuphead.
Yeah, I played a lot of that this year, but that wasn't
I didn't play any
released
of
in
that.
2020.
Fall
Oh
Guys.
man, that's
I almost forgot
Cuphead's
about
like
Fall
one of the
Guys.
most. I said Fall Guys earlier.
Ah man, I totally
I must have
forgot
broken up.
that I played it. I think you did because I didn't hear it. But yes, I did like that quite a bit. We got another comment here Best Marvel and DC comic of the year. I think someone's channeling your whole the comicbook.com angle, right?
Okay, I mean, I'll
What do
take
you
it.
think? You'll take I
I
have
mean,
one. I'm looking up a good image for it.
of what I read this year, I mean, I'm a big fan of what Donny Cates has been doing. So Venom's probably been.
Oh, same. The new Venom
I
is
really
amazing.
love what he's done with Venom. Have you? Are you caught up with King in Black? Um, he in King of Black #2, which is the big Venom event that's happening. Um, he did a big thing, and it's something that I have been thinking he would do since towards the beginning of this run, and I didn't know if he would actually do, and he did. And I'm very surprised, and I've really enjoyed what he's been doing with Venom specifically. All the Hickman X-Men stuff has been a big fan favorite for people.
Yeah, Venom Beyond, which I haven't gotten into the Beyond yet, but I'm coming off of Venom Island. This is on my list for
Well,
sure.
so to me, and this I don't want to. This isn't a knock on any other artists that have been on this book.
Yeah.
When Venom started, it was Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman, and then they did the Carnage thing together, and now they're doing King and Black together. But it's Stegman because of the way his art is. I think it takes a bit longer to do what he does, and so he's not been on the whole book. And I really struggle with it at times when Stegman's not on there. I don't think that Donnie becomes a good writer or a bad writer at any point, but I think when he and Stegman are together, it is such a great partnership that they bring out the absolute best in one another, and it's some of the best art I've seen in a long time in Stegman's Venom. And whenever he and Donnie are together, that title absolutely soars. Like the King in Black is like that now. This big event, they're working really well together, and if they're ever partnered up, I mean, you can't go wrong.
I feel bad. We're talking Marvel stuff. I don't have any DC stuff on my end. What I have is not spontaneous. Doctor Doom.
Okay,
The newest Doctor Doom from Christopher Cantwell. Oh my gosh, I have been loving this whole series. I don't know if you've gotten into it yet, but just like the art style is my favorite thing about it. Like you can even tell from the covers, like it has this like intergalactic, like just monumentalness to this character who I want to come to the movies again, and I want him to be done justice in a way that he hasn't been, honestly. And yeah, I don't have too much to say besides like I was super happy this year saw like some new Doctor Doom stories that feel a little bit like a lot of them are a little bit throwback. Like we see a little bit more of his backstory in a couple of issues that just kind of told from like a different perspective. But yeah, if people are looking for DC comics, unfortunately, Charlie, I can't think of any. That
I mean,
read this year, to be honest with you.
Green Lantern's been one that a lot of people I don't have anything against DC. I've just been more of a Marvel guy. It's just that's where a lot of my knowledge is. That's when I review comics, I'm almost entirely reviewing Marvel stuff
I
just
usually
because that's
prefer
where
DC.
I've lived.
DC comics
But
tend to be my favorites.
Green Lantern has been one of the big ones, and there was a run of Suicide Squad that there was only like 9 issues or something, but that run of Suicide Squad is tremendous.
Yeah.
I think Tom Taylor did that. I could be wrong. I'm looking right now. I believe it's Tom Taylor. And there was another Hellblazer. Hellblazer's been fantastic. I know a lot of people have been really into Hellblazer. But Venom's been the one that I've
I'm
just kept
not.
so
I wish
tightly
I
with.
was. We got another question about something. I actually don't know, Charlie, if this is your jam.
It
I
is
hope
not.
it is. It's not. Okay, so we have a question. I'm going to bring it up here. If we read any manga this year. And I have to admit, I didn't read a lot of like new manga. This is from Juanes. There's only one manga I read consistently this year that I genuinely really enjoyed and would recommend, and that is this whole thing right here, One Piece, which has been going on since Charlie and I were kids, so it's nothing new. But to me, every time One Piece enters like a new arc, because their arcs are like they take years,
So long.
it's ridiculous. But I've been reading the manga pretty faithfully for the better part of like a decade and a half. And this past year and a half, particularly this year where they've been in what's called the Wano arc, has been so fun and so fulfilling. Backstories for characters we've heard about since like the mid 2000s, and we're finally seeing like who they actually like, what they look like, and what their deal is. We're seeing Luffy becoming like, he's not just called the Fifth Emperor, but now he's becoming like this unstoppable force. He's learning new powers that make him more unstoppable than ever. I understand One Piece is a very difficult thing to break into, and it's very basic, I guess, in some ways, because people talk about One Piece all the time, I guess. And it's not exactly like an indie sort of manga. It's like the number one manga for years. But if there was any reason or any time to start jumping in, because it is getting close to the end game, I think. It depends on if you ask Ichiro Oda. I think Wano is representing like this series at its best, and the action, the art style, the anime has actually been good for the first time since. Jeez, I don't think the anime has been this good since Water 7, honestly. It's kind of sad in a way, but yeah, I don't know if anybody ever was going to watch this video and be like, oh, a One Piece. I was waiting for John to talk about One Piece. This is one of my more under talked about loves. Is
the only manga I've ever read. I read a bunch last year. I don't think I've read any of it this year, but there's a spin-off to My Hero Academia called My Hero Academia Vigilantes. Which it, yeah. It deals
one
with...
of my favorite animes of this year, by the way.
Oh yeah, My Hero's great.
Season.
And it deals with characters that necessarily don't have the quirks, or their quirks just aren't like very important, and they're not heroes, but they're going around and doing hero stuff anyway. And it very much like if All Might is a Superman type character, one of the main characters of this is very much the Batman. Yeah. I believe his name's Knuckle Duster. I could be wrong. I need to go. It's been a while, but he has like a black, kind of like hood mask thing on, and he's just he's an endlessly enjoyable character. But it's just, I really love the mixing the My Hero world with some of these more grounded characters was really, really fun for me.
I think you got it right. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He looks fantastic.
Yeah. He's a lot of fun.
Character design.
He's a lot of fun. And I mean, they're all really unexpected. Like, you don't quite know what to get from them.
Oh, Charlie, you broke out a little bit. Your internet has had enough. Oh, there you are. Are you back?
There I am. I'm here. It didn't never go out for me, so I'm here.
Awesome.
But yeah, if you're into manga, that's the one that it's the only manga that I've read, so I recommend it.
Yeah, it's like the one and only.
That's it. I've watched some anime, but that's
Yeah, I definitely watch anime more than I read manga, which is but that's a me problem. Although I watched a lot of really great anime this year for the first time, like Promised Neverland. I finally got into.
Promised Neverland is wild.
Holy cow! I shared that with like everybody I could. Like, please watch this. I finally saw Erased, which was a long time coming. It's been recommended to me for the longest time. So finally saw that. I thought it was okay. Got into it for the most part. I rewatched the second half of Naruto Shippuden because of the pandemic, which I just kind of wanted to revisit it because with Naruto, I read the manga. I didn't really watch the anime much once we got to Shippuden, and I have to say the anime actually was solid in a lot of different parts. The manga kind of like goes through things, and that was a slow burn because it's like every year it was like 10 minutes of like the anime. Sometimes it felt like, but no, it's pretty solid stuff. Mainly because I had been watching and reading Boruto, and that had been going not great because that's a hard anime / manga to really sink your teeth into. I think we have more time for one last question here. So we have a question. Did you like the new Strokes album? I didn't listen to it. Did you?
I did not.
I missed it.
I have nothing against the Strokes, just not, Sorry,
I'm
Pixie
looking
Lover.
it up now. I don't even remember if. I don't think I caught wind of this when it was doing its thing. It's called The New Abnormal, and I have to say I'm not the biggest Strokes fan. I mean, I like Reptilia because I'm an American, but yeah, looks. I guess we can't speak on this one.
Yeah, I guess I'll listen to it tonight and get back to you.
we will do our best. We finally got stumped. we were getting all these like pop culture corners to talk about, and finally got us on music, which pretty fitting.
Yeah, I'm not as big of a music person as I think I want to be, just because I'm constantly watching stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm listening to stuff, but it tends to be like we were kind of talking about this earlier, like the instrumental thing. So All right, Charlie, I've kept you long enough, way past your nap time. Probably, I'm gonna take a nap actually. But
It's too late for a nap here. I'm a couple
that's
hours
right.
ahead of you.
Oh, that's right. You're 3 hours ahead of me. I
No,
always
I'm two.
forget.
I'm two. I'm in Nashville, so I'm
Nashville
central.
is not.
No,
I
we're
can't
just
keep
we're
up.
just an hour and a half or so, maybe 2 hours past the line.
That's ridiculous to me, just because like, I'm an East Coaster by origin, and I even get this stuff wrong. So how sad is that?
Oh, I never got it. Like when I first started coming to Nashville, I was like, oh wait, this is a different time. I don't understand.
That's weird. Because
The whole
especially
thing.
because like my sister lives in really close to Chattanooga, and
Hmm.
because she's
I
in
think they're
Georgia.
still Eastern time.
She is, yeah.
Yeah,
So it's like to me, it's like you're all in like the same cloister. So I don't know.
yeah.
I
It
don't
cuts like
understand.
right there through East Tennessee.
Uh, well, Charlie, it's been obviously a pleasure. Always is. Thank you for chatting about pop culture for 2 hours nearly.
Hey, this is
That's
I've been stuck at home long enough. I can do this all day.
all right, Captain America. Fitting enough. All right. Thank you for watching all the way to the end here. Definitely be sure to like and subscribe and ring the bell. Do all the normal YouTube things you're supposed to do. If you want to be notified, of course, when we're going live, we have something scheduled. That's the best way to do that. Especially because I don't do a ton of marketing or anything. I just sort of decide I'm going to stream. See ya. Unfortunately, that's how I handle it. But Charlie, hope to have you on again, probably to talk more Pixar stuff because I have questions and I hope you have
Yeah.
answers.
Oh, I mean, I will try. If you don't have answers to a Pixar thing, I don't know if I do, but I will try my best.
I'm not a
You know.
I'm not a sage, Jesus. But where can people find you online if they want to read your stuff or
I mean, the best thing
whatever?
is at Charlie Ridgely on Twitter. That's where I tweet a lot. That's my main outlet there. I mean, I'm at comicbook.com. There's a lot of articles in there, so it's a little hard to find my stuff through it. But I mean, it's sprinkled in there. Anything Cobra Kai from us is probably from me. So if you like Cobra Kai, I'm gonna have a lot of stuff over the next week or so. So that'll be worth watching and reading.
All right,
And
yeah.
whatever else
I'm
you
gonna
consume things.
I'm gonna make sure everyone sees your Twitter. Here it is. And look at that. Just because we were just talking about Delroy Lindo, so
Oh, that's my most recent tweet. It's about
yeah.
Delroy.
Be sure to follow Charlie on there if you haven't already. Definitely follow me and say hey. I'd love to talk to you. See you, everybody. Thank you for an amazing couple of hours and for all the comments and questions. It was really fun, especially toward the end. We got to kind of do a little bit of a speed round, although it wasn't very speedy. We took our time. It was fun. See you, everybody.
See y'all.